Hello, everyone. Welcome. We are going to wait just a couple more minutes to get started.
Then Robin, do you want to share the slides now?
Yes.
Also, who invited the AI chatbot that I had to deny it
No.
to this call?
I'm actually going to stop for a minute to see if okay, yeah, I'm going to. Okay, I think I'll keep that off until I do the intro, if that's okay with you. The
Yeah, that's fine.
slides. Okay, great. Um, Hi, everyone. Welcome. We're going to get started in just a minute or two. Okay, Sheridan, how are you feeling? You feel ready?
I'm ready.
Okay, great. Hi, everyone. My name is Robin O'Hanlon, and I'm the Associate Librarian for User Services at Memorial Sloan Kettering Library. I'm joined today by my colleagues, Joanna Goldberg, one of our research informationists, and my colleague, Sheridan Sayles, who you'll hear more about in a moment. So thank you for joining us for MSK Library and Archives Presents Highlights from the Archives. I'm so delighted to introduce Sheridan, who is MSK's archivist. So in her role as archivist, Sheridan has worked to modernize systems and open access to vital institutional and medical research records. Prior to working at MSK, she was the technical services archivist at Seton Hall University, the assistant archivist at Trinity Church on Wall Street, and the Frank R. Lautenberg archivist and assistant archivist at Rutgers University. In addition to her work roles, Sheridan is active in the archival labor advocacy community, having served on the Best Practices for Archival Term Positions Working Group, and has recently joined the Archival Workers Labor Task Force. She holds a Bachelor of Arts from the University of Mary Washington, a master's in library science from the University of Maryland, and a master's in American Studies Public History from Rutgers University at Newark. And we are so lucky to have Sheridan speaking with us today to share some highlights from the archives. And with that, I will let you take it away, Sheridan. I'm going to share my screens and just let me know when you want to advance to the next slide.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you so much. So, as Robin said, I am Sheridan. I'm the archivist here at MSK. I've worked here for a little under 4 years, and my job is to both preserve the physical materials that document Memorial Sloan Kettering Cancer Center's history, and also to serve as the touch point for historical information about MSKCC. One of the joys I have in working here is that I learn something new about our backstory every day, and I'm excited to share it with you all. Um, just a little bit of a warning, I do have a little bit of a cold, so if my voice gives out, it's me and not you. So I'll try to still keep it lively. But all right, next slide. So since we have a mixed group of attendees today, I thought I would take a little bit of time to explain what we do as a department and how we support the larger institutional mission here at MSK. Next. The archives houses the unpublished, or in our case, internally published, records of MSK to understand the history and culture of the organization. This mostly comes in the form of MSK publications, photographs, correspondence, other documents, and more recently in videos and digital files. The primary goal in collecting these items is to show what MSK was like in certain time periods, to remember dates and circumstances of major events, and illustrate how we as an organization have grown over time. I work with a mixture of internal stakeholders to share or confirm historic information about MSK, and I also work with researchers who are interested in a variety of topics, including the history of medicine. I work with genealogists, people interested in the history of philanthropy, and various other topics related to New York City and medicine. Because our focus is more institutionally than individually oriented, we do not retain things like patient records, human resource files, or other individually identifying information. The main reason for this is that for archival purposes, the risks of patient and employee privacy violations outweighs the historical implications. But if you are interested in these type of records, we do have a medical records department, and our human resources team also does save some individual records. But for the most part, we are just focused on MSK, the institution, and how we've grown therein. Because we do not, well, let me start over. We do retain the works of individuals, and that is primarily based on their connection to MSK and the intellectual value of the records. So we prioritize things such as research notes, meeting minutes, and correspondence over things like office art or other things that don't really tell us much about MSK as an institution. We have gotten the vast majority of our records through internal transfer from other MSK departments. And in fact, it was a push to collect our history prior to our centennial in 1984 that created the archives you see today. We do occasionally get donations from third parties, such as family members or close friends of MSK employees, and we are always looking for new records to add to the collection. Our archives is never complete. So if you encounter any materials that you think we may be interested in, or just you're not sure, may be interested, maybe not, please feel empowered to reach out to me. I'm happy to start a discussion about how these things can build. Next. Now, before I get into the contents of the archives, I would like to briefly discuss our institutional history to give a sense of what records we have and how they can inform research. I like to think of the growth of MSK in terms of the people who financially supported this organization, the research that improved the outcome of cancer patients, and our physical footprint. Basically, the philanthropy, the discoveries, and New York City. Next. The idea to found a cancer hospital came about in a February 7th, 1884 meeting at the residence of Mrs. Elizabeth Cullum, and it was inspired by the outpatient model of cancer treatment that was gaining popularity in Europe. As the granddaughter of Alexander Hamilton and the widow of a Civil War general, Mrs. Cullum was well connected within Gilded Age New York society and leveraged her connections to build the hospital. At this time, public health efforts such as a comprehensive sewer systems, the beginning of epidemiology, and a little bit later on, vaccinations, were beginning to lessen the effects of infectious disease, and high-profile cancer diagnoses from figures such as Ulysses S. Grant were highlighting the need for a hospital solely for the treatment of cancer. The New York Cancer Hospital was formally incorporated on May 31st, 1884, so that's coming up, and was funded through $315,000 in donations. The most publicized of these donations was a $50,000 donation from the husband of Mrs. Cullum's husband, Mr. John Jacob Astor, and the hospital formally opened for patients on December 7th, 1887. The hospital was funded in its early years primarily through private donations, so, as an example of which, a $100,000 donation was given in 1910 by James Douglas, and that endowed 20 beds for clinical research and created a lab to study radium. The main campus we see today as well was also made possible by a donation of land on York Street between 67th and 68th Street by John D. Rockefeller in 1934. At its onset, the hospital was envisioned both as a place where those with cancer could seek treatment and scientists could research the causes and novel treatment of cancer. In 1893, William B. Coley was hired as an attending surgeon, and here he furthered research into Coley's toxin, which was an early form of immunotherapy. We completed pioneering research in the use of radium and X-rays in the treatment of cancer, and in 1919, one of our lead scientists, James Ewing, wrote Neoplastic Diseases, a textbook on tumors. This text laid the groundwork for modern oncology by establishing a systematic and comprehensive basis for diagnosing human cancer. This was expanded in 1933 by Dr. Elise Strangler-Esperance when she opened a clinical space to identify early stage and precancerous growths before they would become deadly. And finally, in addition to our work treating and diagnosing cancer, we became a leader in teaching the next generation through offering a training program for nurses in the early 1900s and by establishing the nation's first fellowship program in 1927. Next. Now, the post-war period is where we really see this organization move from a singular hospital to a comprehensive cancer center, a title of which was formally designated as part of the National Cancer Act of 1971. The 1940s saw explosive growth of the institution with the building of what we know today as main campus. Memorial Hospital opened in 1939, and the size of the York Avenue plot allowed space for more buildings, including additional lab space, the Strang Clinic for Cancer Prevention, and the opening of the Sloan Kettering Institute in 1945. Alfred P. Sloan and Charles F. Kettering's goal in founding the Sloan Kettering Institute was to take lessons gleaned from the automotive industry and apply them to cancer research. This was a form of corporate sponsorship, as this new institute was highly publicized within General Motors. And in addition to corporate-backed funding, what we know today as the Society of MSK formed in 1946. They hosted community events such as auctions and designer-collaborated fashion shows to raise money towards programs such as a lobby playgroup for pediatric patients, seen on the bottom right. Controversial figure, Cornelius P. Rhodes, led the new Sloan Kettering Institute and was inspired by his studies of mustard gas in World War II to further research on the study of chemotherapy. His influence played out quickly as the first chemotherapy drugs were developed in 1953, and 4 years later, virologist Charlotte Friend identified a virus that caused leukemia in mice, supporting the new concept that a viral infection could later lead to a cancer diagnosis. The confluence of this period led to increased interinstitutional partnerships, such as with Cornell University, that led to a new MSK mission to tackle the 4 fronts of cancer. They were teaching through Cornell, research through the Sloan Kettering Institute, treatment through Memorial Hospital, and prevention through MSK's Strang Clinic. By the 1960s and 70s, doctors Joseph Birkenau, Herbert Ottgen, M. Lois Murphy, and Charlotte Tan, among many others, worked on developing new cancer drugs, many of which are still used today, and also on implementing combination therapies such as radiation and surgery to minimize risk to patients. These efforts both increased the survival rate and increased access to treatment. The Pediatric Day Hospital, for example, opened in 1968 and saw a doubling of patient visits between 1969 and 1974. Next. Finally, the MSK we know of today was legally incorporated in 1980, and the growth since then has been overwhelming. We expanded on the lessons from the 1970s about looking at the whole patient and opened the nation's first pain service in 1982 and established a post-treatment resource program in 1988. The beginning of Paul Mark's presidency in 1980 also marked a shift towards increased discoveries on the molecular and genetic level. Our researchers cloned the gene for insulin receptors in 1985 and established the role of the BRCA1 gene in 1999. And the culmination of these and hundreds of other discoveries from our research teams have laid the groundwork for the use of precision medicine in treating patients. And though we identified a system for identifying T cells in 1968, the first CAR-T therapies were approved in 2017, and we continue to further research in immunologic approaches. Our fundraising efforts have also grown by adding more grassroots approaches to our impact portfolio. The Fred's Team Running program started in 1995, within my lifetime, and Cycle for Survival started in 2006. And both of these have raised more than $580 million for cancer research. So, yay for everyday people continuing. And what was once a small hospital in 1887 has expanded to a 24-location research and treatment system spanning across 2 states. And to give an impact of what the last few decades have seen as far as cancer research, the 5-year survival rate for breast cancer was 58% in 1975, and the 10-year survival rate for breast cancer is now 84%. The 5-year survival rate from leukemia has gone from 34% in 1975 to 70% in 2013. And both Hodgkin's and non-Hodgkin's lymphomas have gone from a 5-year survival rate of around 30% in 1955 to 86% and 71% today. Next. So now that we've had a look at the institutional history of MSK, let's see how it's documented in the historical record and how these materials may be used in studying the history of medicine and other areas. Next. Our annual reports are probably our most referenced archival resource, as they offer a year-by-year breakdown of the activities, discoveries, and donations at MSK. The contents of these reports has shifted over time, so I'll provide a little breakdown of what to expect in each year. In the 1880s through around 1925, our annual reports gave a full review of the events that led to our founding, and are also a great resource for things such as staff lists, lists of cancers treated, names of nurses who completed training programs here, and list of donors and what was donated. The list of cancers treated is especially useful because it identifies every single type of cancer treated, how it was treated, and what the outcomes were. And then, just on an amusement level, I particularly enjoy the donor information, especially contrasted with our modern reports, which basically only list the names of who donated and in what bracket. Our much older donations, they get a lot more granular. So yes, there's money, but also physical items donated. In 1913, for example, I learned that Mrs. William F. Milton donated 20 pounds of oolong tea and 6 nightgowns, and a Mr. August Cutler donated 14 pounds of striped bass. But outside of amusing donations, I use these reports frequently for genealogical requests. They can help confirm institutional foundation information and just overall get operational insight. How were things working? How does it move forward? By around 1926 through the 50s, the reports had stopped listing every cancer treated, no more information about the founding, and the granular donor information has kind of also fallen by the wayside. And instead, what these documents show is reports of, annual reports for each department. So a report of the Department of Surgery, a report of the Department of Bone Service, all of that, and also goes to list every single staff publication from that year. I have used this content to share the histories of different departments and to confirm the dates of new builds or novel treatments. And finally, the reports from the 1960s moving forward more closely reflect the annual reports that we see today. They include vision statements, such as presidential and leadership reports. They document major discoveries, major donors, and building expansions, while also including the kind of qualitative stories that illustrate the impact of cancer treatment. I'm in the final stages of implementing a grant to bring our annual reports online, and I hope to have these searchable on our website by the end of the quarter. Next. In addition to the annual reports, we have many different internal publications, which you can see by year at the bottom of this slide. And these publications are most helpful for more of the deep dive questions. So I can use these publications to answer questions like, when was an attending promoted? When was a lab renovated? And I found these records to be helpful in discovering human interest stories from different periods in MSK history. In the 1970s, for example, one of our animal technicians won the New York State Lottery and used the winnings to buy a house in the Bronx. He did continue to still work for MSK, which I think is a great sign that this was a great place to work, but also just very interesting to see over the course of many different publications how he used these lottery winnings. The audience of these documents were primarily internal, and you can see in the picture above that there's information about the pension plan that had started in 1958. But our issues within the past 30 years or so tend to be more outward facing and do not include any work related information like pension, transportation, insurance, that sort of thing. So if a researcher has a question about a topic that doesn't appear in the annual reports, I almost always recommend checking out these MSK publications as a backup because, yes, there may be the high level information about what decision was made, but a little bit more detail oriented could be included in these publications. Next. Another one of our big collecting areas is personal papers, and these are an especially useful tool for getting deeper insight into decision making of certain figures, as well as progress on various projects. Our personal papers, or manuscript collections, come from a mix of researchers, administrators, and they best cover activity from around 1940 to the year 2000. To illustrate their uses, I would like to highlight two of the 39 manuscript collections we have in the archives. The first is the papers of Dr. Hayes Martin, who was appointed chief of the Head and Neck Service in 1934. So he was very much involved in MSK through the 1920s, and he was closely involved in the management aspect of the hospital for decades afterwards. His papers are a rich source of early philanthropic records of MSK. So while we did not have many of the development records, we do have some early correspondence about Mrs. Cullum, another one of our big donors, Ogden Mills. That is all within the Hayes Martin collection. As a noted surgeon, we have many surgical illustrations as well as articles that he wrote about different surgery and surgery techniques that he utilized. And there's also information about the culture of working at Memorial Hospital. This is primarily evident through the audio recordings and oral histories he collected over the years. And even if there is more of like a management question, I do end up sometimes referencing the Hayes Martin collection because it is so well developed. We also have the papers of Dr. Jimmy Holland. For those who do not know, she was the founder of the field of psycho-oncology, and that was started in 1977. And we have the papers that cover her entire 25 plus year career at MSK. So this collection includes information about her career. We have her CVs and things of that nature. It has a complete run of the psycho-oncology journal issues that she served as editor for. And it also includes research data from experiments that she personally ran herself, as well as conference presentations, early drafts of which, and final drafts. In conversation with our other collections and publications, these materials provide great insight into how certain research moved forward and how we chose to present it to external audiences. Next slide. Apologies. Next, we have our governance documents and our non-medical collections. These records include our board minutes collection, and as additionally collection for administrative departments such as development, human resources, marketing, you name it, and other similar resources. Our current board minute holdings cover the years 1896 through 1991 and include our main hospital board in addition to various committees such as the building committee, the medical board, planning and budget committees. It's all here. These documents are helpful in determining the why of many institutional decisions and can include correspondence, community research, reports, and of course the minutes themselves. In addition to our board minutes, I would especially like to highlight from our collections the marketing communications one, which if you would like to peruse it in the archives catalog is still referred to by its previous name of public affairs. This collection holds press campaign calendars, photographs, press releases about different discoveries and events, and just a breakdown of the events themselves. This helps in understanding what we publicized and how we chose to do so. It helps reflect our institutional priorities, and in the case of things such as treatments, the initial vision for how they would affect the medical community. This is our primary collection for housing photographic materials at MSK, and it contains thousands of images from the 1880s until around 1980. If you want our more recent photographic records, that will be done through the communications team at the Digital Asset Library. If these are anything you are interested in reviewing, I do have to note that when seeking out these materials, certain content will require legal review or just permission from our marketing communications team. For non-MSK researchers, there are various legal issues, so sometimes just needs an external review. Next. So while we do not have a research data collection, these type of records have appeared in both our manuscript collections and in standalone records of different departments. This data can provide insight into the development of experiments and elucidate the reproducibility of certain studies, among other things. Some examples of research data we have in the archives includes lab notebooks of physicist Giacchino Faia and Edith Quimby. We also have note cards from the clinical chemistry department and data from Dr. Jimmy Holland's research. Just like our other documents, special permission may be required to use our research data. So if you do identify any records that you would like to research, please be explicit in your reasoning why. These are the most likely to contain patient information, and just for privacy, we're very concerned with making sure we protect our patients. And you also may expect a few weeks delay in delivery of these records. Next. So that is the highlight of the collections we have. We have around 1,250 linear feet of materials in the MSK collections and growing. So more things come out as they are available, but now we found something you're interested in. How can I access these records? Next. The best way to learn about what we have in the archives is to look in our archives catalog. You can get there by going to the MSK library website, library.mskcc.org, navigate to the archives tab, and use the embedded search bar to search within the catalog. Alternatively, you can just go directly to the archives catalog through the URL archivescatalog.mskcc.org, and that will send you there directly. The catalog has resource records from 85 collections housed in the archives, and most include a folder-level inventory that can provide insight into the contents of the collections. It works like most other search engines, but please be advised that the collections are organized by resource or collection at the top level. Things are then further organized by series, and then the most granular level we have is file or item. If you complete a search and find the keyword you were looking for, seeing if it is a collection, series, or file will help you understand how much of the content we have that you can research. The other option, and I would encourage this anyway, is just to contact me directly. You have my email there, sales@mskcc.org, or I find say less is even funnier, but easier to remember. I recommend reaching out to me just because approximately 15 to 20% of our collections are either unprocessed or underprocessed, and I can use my knowledge of the collections to help you with what you need. And kind of as I illustrated before, it may not necessarily be obvious that, oh, I want to know when this donor gave X information. Might not be obvious to look at the Hayes Martin collection. So I can leverage what I know about what is already here to help you find what you need. Next. And now that you found something, it's time to review it. So first, there are a few options. If there are only a few pages of items you want to review, say one folder, I'm happy to digitize and share copies of these items with you. Though, like I said, depending on the content, there may be a little bit of a review time. And as always, please be explicit in why you need each item, because I could say, oh, we do have other materials on this content in another collection, or there may be restrictions otherwise. So please be clear, let me know. If, however, you are interested in looking at a much larger collection, you can always come for a research visit. We have two different physical locations where you can go. Our main location is in Lyndhurst, New Jersey, and depending on the content that you're looking at, I'm able to accommodate a visit with about 1 to 2 weeks of lead time. If, however, you need to look at something in Manhattan, we do have an additional research outpost that requires about 3 to 4 weeks of lead time. And this is mostly due to multiple scheduling factors that are required with this location. Regardless of which location you are interested in, I will note that the vast majority of our materials are housed off-site. So part of the lead time is due to me having to order these documents, make sure they're accurately described in the catalog, and make sure you have everything you need. Regardless of your needs, I am happy to work with you to the best of my ability to ensure that you can access our collections and get what you need. Next slide. And that is everything I have today. So a little bit of a crash course in the archives. So I'm happy to answer any questions you may have now, or if something comes up later on, you are welcome to email me at any time. So thank you.
Thank you, Sheridan. That was such a delightful journey into the rich history of MSK, and your work has done so much to enhance access to this history, and you approach your work with such a sense of care and stewardship and professionalism and good humor, like 14 pounds of striped bass, who knew? And we're so I think, lucky at MSK to have your expertise, your diligence, and your determination working with the archives. We do have some time for questions, and so please feel free to enter those in the Q&A. And so I also have some questions for you as well, Sheridan, if you don't mind. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and I will put the spotlight on you. And so my first question for you is sort of, is there a particular era that you enjoy sort of like working with the archives? Like, is it the earlier years of the institution, or the research, when like research started to ramp up, or what sort of do you have a favorite era, or does it vary?
It really just depends on what's available. So in general, my favorite time in history is the Gilded Age, which is probably a weird and sick thing to say, but I really do enjoy the Gilded Age and how it plays out in our modern times. So I'm always fascinated when we can find materials related to that time period. I will say more recently, I've been partnering with the Society of MSK on their 80th anniversary. So as part of researching that, I've been pulling together documents for them to showcase their history, some very cool things they've done. Like in the 1960s, they had two different second ladies, one first lady, one second lady, as the president of the board. And one of their big collaborators was Frank Sinatra. So it's been very fun to scan programs from Frank Sinatra fundraisers to share with the society.
That's great. So we have an audience question now from Jacqueline. How do you go about trying to get donations, especially wondering about personal papers? Do people just reach out to your department, or do you have to seek them out?
It's a bit of both. So the Jimmy Holland papers, for example, I was very lucky in that before I even started, we had well, her very supportive office manager, like, love the woman, she's the best. She was able to connect us with all the papers and keep those, so that's how we get them. Also, one thing that I found very helpful is just the all MSK staff announcements. So I've seen when, oh, this person's retiring, and sometimes I'll reach out and say, oh, hey, I hear you're retiring. Might be cool if you have anything for us. But for the most part, the bulk of our personal papers were donated prior to my starting. So I've only gotten like one or two since starting here. But if you know anyone who's retiring or is closing a lab, feel free to send me an email. I'd love to keep in contact.
We have another question about sort of besides the catalog, perhaps a bit about your digital repository environment.
So when this is kind of a loaded question because when I first started here in June of 2022, everything was analog. Um, all of our finding aids were either handwritten or written on a typewriter. I had gotten a printout of our Excel inventory. I didn't even get the Excel file. I had to do some research to get access to that. So launching the catalog itself was a big success from the past 2 years or so. At this point, I am currently working towards, and it's just been like technical issues have been keeping it. We are working towards fellow archivists. No, we are working towards building a digital catalog of like our digitized assets. I'm hoping that will be available at the end of the quarter, but as with all things technical, you never really know. But yes, we right now only have our online catalog, which is Archives catalog. That's just the inventories. Hopefully soon we'll have our digitized collections catalog as well.
Great. Because we have a question from Jason. How do you deal with contemporary digital archives? For example, current annual reports aren't as detailed as they used to be, but there are lots of press releases and posts on the public site about the research and scientists. Do you collect or archive any of that?
So we do not have a social media collecting apparatus right now, although that is something I would like to pursue in the future. I am very lucky, however, in that we have a very good relationship with the marketing and communications team. So that way, when they do have like issues of MSK News or other similar publications that come out, we do actively collect them. With our digital collections catalog, we also have it's like three systems that work together. We have the archives catalog, we have basically a storage area for these things to live and also preserve. One of my famous or favorite misnomers about digital collections is that they're honestly probably the most fragile things we have. If nothing, like proprietary fonts might not get transferred or codecs fail. There's so many ways that digital collections fail. And at least with a physical asset, if the corner of a document's torn, it's still readable. If your font fails, the document's entirely unreadable. So our storage environment is also a preservation environment. And one thing we are able to do is, with the catalog end, develop a workflow for describing these foreign digital materials and then capture them within the storage environment. One of my next steps that I'm looking forward to do is work on some of our MSK emails. So like our hospital presidents emails, Vicar's View. I want to start collecting those and keeping them within our preservation environment.
That's wonderful. It looks like that was our last question. So, Sheridan, thank you so much for this wonderful presentation. And especially since you're feeling a little under the weather, you would never know. Everyone who registered will receive a copy of the recording. Joanna has also popped Sheridan's email address into the chat, as well as a link to the archives catalog. Yes, you can see we have a lot of positive responses in chat. Sheridan, I hope you feel better soon. Thank you so much. And thank you all for joining us today for this MSK Library and Archives Presents events. We hope to see you at our next one. Have a great afternoon, everyone.
Thank you so much for coming.